Hi everyone, welcome to a new series. I really want to highlight some American heroes that you may or may not have heard of. And if you have heard of them, you might find some simple facts that maybe you've never heard of before. Today, on my inaugural point of the series, we're going to talk about somebody, a hero of the American Revolution, a man whose actions helped America win its independence. A man trusted by some of the most important leaders in the war. A man whose courage changed history. And yet, there's a really good chance you've never heard his name. In fact, if I walked into a room of 100 Americans and asked them who this person was, I might get one hand raised, maybe two, maybe. And that's a shame because his story deserves to be told. Let's go back in time to the late 1700s. America is fighting for its independence. The British Army is one of the most powerful military forces in the world. George Washington is trying to hold together an underfunded and undersupplied army. The future of the country hangs in the balance. And somewhere in Virginia, a young man is watching it all unfold. Now here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The man I'm talking about wasn't a soldier, at least not in the way most people imagine. He wasn't commanding troops. He wasn't standing next to Washington in any of the paintings. He wasn't giving famous speeches across the nation. In fact, most people overlooked him completely, which actually turned out to be his greatest advantage. Because while others were being noticed, he was listening, he was watching and learning and collecting information. That kind of information wins wars. Think about it. Long before satellites, secure communications, and way before intelligence agencies, the fate of a nation often depended on ordinary people gathering information and getting it to the right hands. And this man was especially good at it. So good, in fact, that American commanders began trusting him with increasingly dangerous assignments. Eventually, he found himself operating between both sides, gathering information, building trust, taking risks that could have cost him everything. And here's another detail that makes this story remarkable. The man I'm talking about was enslaved. He was helping fight for freedom while living without it himself. Few people could have faced that kind of contradiction and kept moving forward. But as the war continued, the information he provided became increasingly valuable. His reports helped American leaders understand British plans and troop movements. Some of that intelligence found its way to one of Washington's most trusted commanders, the Marquis de Lafayette. And that's when this hidden hero's contributions became impossible to ignore. His intelligence played an important role leading up to the Battle of Yorktown. Now, if Yorktown sounds familiar, it should. Yorktown is widely considered the battle that secured American independence. That battle effectively ended the Revolutionary War. And one of the people helping make that victory possible wasn't a famous general. It was a spy. A man history has almost forgotten. His name? James Armistead. But the story doesn't end there. When the war ended, America gained its freedom. James did not. Think about that for a minute. The nation he helped liberate was free, and yet he was still enslaved. It wasn't until the Marquis personally advocated on his behalf that James eventually gained his freedom. And out of respect and gratitude, James adopted Lafayette's last name. And from that day forward, he became James Armistead Lafayette, the hero history almost forgot. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, wait a minute, why have I never learned this in school? You're not alone. That was my reaction too. And maybe that's why I wanted to tell his story. Because when we talk about heroes, we tend to picture the people whose names appear in giant letters in history books, the generals, the presidents, the famous figures. But history is filled with people like James, people who served quietly and did difficult things without expecting recognition. People whose courage changed outcomes, even if their names aren't widely known. As a veteran and a military mom, I think about that a lot because service doesn't always happen in the spotlight. Most of the time, it's the person standing watch when nobody sees them. Sometimes it's the spouse holding everything together back home. Or it's the service member doing a job most people will never know existed. And then sometimes it's a man named James, quietly gathering information that helps change the course of history. That's why I love stories like this. They remind us that greatness isn't always loud. Courage isn't always obvious. And heroes don't always become household names. James Armistead Lafayette was one of those people. And as we prepare to celebrate America's 250th birthday, I think heroes like James deserve to be remembered. Not because they're famous, because they mattered. And sometimes the stories we need to hear most are the stories history almost left behind. But before I let you go, I'd love to hear from you. Had you ever heard of James Armistead Lafayette before today? And if there's an American hero you think deserves to be in the spotlight in a future episode, let me know in the comments. One of my goals with this series is to share the stories of people who helped shape our nation. Some will be famous, many will be forgotten, but all worth remembering. If you enjoyed today's story, be sure to subscribe and join me next month for another Soldier of Mom Hero Spotlight. Until next time, take care of each other, appreciate the freedoms we enjoy, and never forget the people who help secure them. Love you.